folks, welcome back to the shop. Frank here. I'm continuing to work on my rack of some sort, and I've mocked up a little moving carriage here, just a small piece of it, to try to work out the arrangement for the bearings, wheels, and the attachment points, that sort of thing. So I've got to go over to the mill and mill some bolt heads flat, mill them off flatter. They stick out too much. Just give me additional clearance. So we'll go do that, and we'll come back and we'll start messing with the bearings, working out the arrangement for what will be a moving carriage on the top of this rack. So I'll let you guess at what the motive force might be for the moving carriage, but we'll come back and work on that. Let's go over to the mill and get started on the bolt head milling down effort. All right, I'm going to mill these heads of these bolts down by 1/4 inch. So I just set my DRO, my quill DRO. I'm going to take 1/10 inch, 100 thousandths off. I'll take the burrs off this, but I need a thinner head on these bolts for clearance. The burrs on the edges interfere with the wrench, and the fact that You know, I just heated this bolt up considerably. Makes it a little tight in the nut. Of course, it was tightened down pretty tight to begin with. I really need to get a socket. All right, zero out my quill DRO there. got the two long rails drilled, and I've got my bearing assemblies here. So these are 1 3/4 diameter, 3/4 inch shaft. Got a small spacer washer here, and of course a nut, and these are the heads that we cut off. Unwieldy here. All right, I've got some washers as spacers on the outside of the bearings. Since the inside of this angle is not perfectly square, I want to space it off a little bit so that the bearings run on a flat surface. And I've cut two pieces of angle here. These are really, right now, I'm mostly just interested in fastening these two rails together. So I'm just going to tack these. I've still got to control the side-to-side movement, and I've got bearings here and here, and I'll have runners on each side of these bearings. So that'll restrict the movement of this sliding rack front to back as opposed to lengthwise. So I don't want to do too much with these. Actually, I might want to move these in someplace else, like right here. Matter of fact, that might be a better place to put them. That'll give me opportunity to fixture and weld the lengthwise runners. So this is going to be a sliding rack, and it's only going to move back and forth about 8 inches, 4 inches each way, maybe 5 inches each way. That's plenty of movement, so that gives you 8 to 10 inches of total movement. And my plan is to have that be adjustable. Okay, so once I get these two rails, I'm going to tack these pieces of, I'm trying to keep the weight of this moving rack minimal. Don't want it to be too heavy, because the heavier it is, the harder it is going to be to move back and forth. There's a bald eagle. Flying away with branches for his nest. All right, I've got a series 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 smaller angle iron pieces here, spaced out so that they're square and evenly spaced, or pretty close. They don't have to be perfect. All right, so now I need to get my lengthwise runners that will run on either side of this bearing. Now, it's not going to be tight to the bearing, so there'll be a 1/16 of an inch clearance. What that means is that only one side will touch this bearing at a time. So you don't have to worry about it not working, that is, touching both sides at the same time. So it'll only touch one side or the other, and that'll allow it to move back and forth. All right, so the purpose for positioning the bearing first is that I can fit the rails to the bearing so that there's no interference and that the spacing front to back is correct. Okay, so got the bearing bars tacked in place in what I think will be the correct positions. So next thing is to weld these guide rails on. So that should give enough motion back and forth and clearance. All right. All right, so that bearing is basically in place. It keeps the trolley from moving back and forth. I just need to do the same thing at the other end. Could do that. think the bearings properly constrain the motion. Now let's just go finish welding off a lot of these spots. All right, so when welding on something like this where you have bearings, you want to make sure you don't pass the current through the bearings. So that right now I've got the ground clamp connected to this frame so that there's no current going through any of the bearings. Then to weld these, I need to move the ground clamp to this frame so that current doesn't pass through these bearings. Always worried about, the welds pulling stuff out of alignment. But I think I'm good here. And if you're looking at the spacing of the bearings, it is not symmetrical. These two are closer together than these. And that is because I want to be able to have an attachment point in the middle and without having to worry about interference with the bearings. So, all right, I think there's just a 1/16 of an inch or less clearance front to back on the horizontal bearings, and we've got, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches of movement back and forth. And that rolls very freely. So that's what we need. All right, the next step is to capture the trolley. So as we mentioned before, this is a target array. There'll be multiple targets on here that you will knock over. So the force of the impact of the shot will throw the target back, and it would have a tendency to flip up this front edge of the trolley. So we're going to cover the wheels. They stick up above this channel with another piece of channel here. I'm going to put one little tack on it here. I want to see if I can know if I can remove the trolley if I can weld this in place and don't have to have it removable. So the trolley can be removable. So that's something to test here. I don't really have any easy way to clamp it, I don't think. I'm going to just tack it. There's a little bit of clearance above the bearings, like 1/8 of an inch. So that's appropriate, because you don't want it rubbing when it's moving back and forth like this, right? So the question is, can we lift the trolley out easily? Okay, no problem. That works. So that pretty much finishes up the trolley portion. Got the retaining rail up front. We'll weld that on. It's just tacked right now. So there's two other components, two assemblies that need to be completed to finish this. One is the target array. Now this is what you would call a plate rack. Most plate racks at gun clubs, target plate racks are stationary targets. You just knock them over, maybe 5 or 6 of them standing up, and there'd be 8 or 10 inch diameter, different shapes. You shoot them and knock them over, and so they're designed primarily for pistols. This is for a cowboy action shooting club, and they shoot pistols and rifles, but they shoot pistol ammunition. So and only soft lead bullets, no jacketed or plated bullets allowed in cowboy action shooting. Certainly no high-powered rifle ammo would ever be used with this. So you need to build, if you're building targets, you need to build them to, withstand, the type of ammunition and firearm being used. So this is for cowboy action. So it's a little easier to do this than it is with a high-powered rifle. You wouldn't build a plate rack generally wouldn't build a plate rack for a high-powered rifle anyway. Now there's, some protective shield will go on the front edge to protect the front edge of the track, and that'll be 3/8 inch, probably AR, and targets on top of here that will stand up and then fall over when you hit them. And then there's the motive force. There is the thing that's going to make this go back and forth. My plan is a pendulum that you would release with a gunshot. You would hit a plate which would operate a latch, which would release a heavy pendulum, which I think is going to be another target, probably a 20-inch diameter circle maybe. So that would be at the end of a 3-foot rod, which would swing, and the weight of that target would be almost 50 pounds if it's 3/8 inch AR steel. That it would have a pivot at the top of it, which would connect to this trolley and cause the trolley to go back and forth. Final things that need to be done: I need to put wheels on one end of this with a hitch coupler on the other end, so that you can pick it up with a trailer dolly and move it around, because it's going to weigh, several hundred pounds. So that's one other thing that needs to be done. So I'm going to wrap it up at this point. I will come back next week working on the pendulum assembly, get the trolley moving back and forth, and then we'll come back and build the targets to go on top of it. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. That helps the channel. Hit the thumbs up, ring the bell so you don't miss any upcoming episodes, and we'll see you on the next one.